Welcome back to Algo.js. Today's question is LeetCode 56, merge intervals. So given an array of intervals where interval I equals start to end, merge all overlapping intervals and return an array of the non-overlapping intervals that cover all the intervals in the input. So with example 1, we have 1, 3, 2, 6, 8, 10, 15, and 18. And our output is 1, 6, 8, 10, 15, and 18. So we've merged 1, 3, and 2, 6. And the reason for this is because there is an overlap between the two arrays. So 3 here is greater than 2, which is in the next array. So we have to merge and take the smallest from the first and the largest from the second. And then in example 2, we have 1, 4, and 4, 5, and the output is 1, 5. So if the value in the first array, if its second value is equal to the first value in the second array, essentially there is an overlap. So the best way to understand this problem and to formulate a solution is to definitely draw this out so you can get a visual representation of the intervals and what's going on. So let's draw this out. So we have 1 through 3 as one interval. We have 2 to 6 as another interval. We have 8 to 10 and finally 10 to 12. So these are our intervals, right? We have, as you can see, an overlap between this point and also this point and this point, because remember, if the two values are equal, then that is classed as an overlap. So those are the two areas that we'll be needing to do some conditional logic in order to create a merge between the two different intervals. So we're going to need a results array, which we're going to populate and pass in the answers. And we are initially going to set the result array with the initial array. And as you can see, the initial array that we're going to be looping through is already sorted. But in the case of this question, there may be an issue where they're not sorted, in which case our first step would be to sort this array to make sure that it's in order so that we can see where the intervals are exactly. So we've created this result array. We've passed in 1, 3, so the first array within it, and this is going to be called previous. Okay, so we're going to call this previous now, because we've already checked it. We have a start and an end within that interval, and we have a start and an end within the next interval. So we're going to call this second interval current. So as we said, we have an overlap here. And the reason for this overlap is that this value right here is less than this value here. So we can say if current, actually, what I'll do is I'll call this prev, I'll call this current. So if current at start, so if this value right here is less than previous at end, and remember in this case right here we have an overlap and those values are equal, so we have to say is less than or equal to previous at end, then what we need to do is we need to update this interval in order to accommodate this interval. And the way we'll do that is we'll reassign previous end to equal the max between previous end and current end. So the previous end will now be 6. So this will be our new previous value. Previous down here, which is in the results, will update. So I go to 1, 6. And I say it's the maximum between previous and current value, just in case. So say for example, the previous initially was this. It was 1 through 7. In this case, we have an overlap, but the previous end's value, so this is previous at the minute, the previous end value is already greater than current end. So we take the maximum between the two. So now we move on. We update current to be here, and we check this interval right here. Is there an overlap between current and previous? No, there's not. There is no overlap. So in this case, all we need to do is add current into results. Current is 8, 10. But here's the catch. We need to update previous to the current value, so that the next time we check current and previous, it's going to be regarding the next two. So previous moves here, and current moves here. Now we check for an overlap. This is considered an overlap. So we take the maximum, we update the previous end. So this is going to be 10. We update that to the maximum between the previous end and the current end, which is going to be this value right here. So it's going to be 12. So this is what the previous now looks like. And this will update to 12. And then we move along, current goes out of bound, and we return res. So with regards to the complexity analysis, time is going to be O of n, where n is the length of the input, and space is going to be O1, constant space. Because even though we are populating this result array at the bottom here, this is added to our output. So it's not classed as occupying space within this solution. So we're going to start this off by creating constants called start, which is going to be equal to 0, and end, which is going to be equal to 1. So this is just starting off by creating the indexes for 0 and 1 within the interval arrays. Then we need to order the intervals, so we need to sort them in ascending order. So intervals.sort, taking A and B. And remember, we are sorting an array of an arrays, so we need to say A at start minus B at start. Then we need to create a previous variable, which is going to be equal to intervals at 0, so it's going to be equal to the first array within the intervals array. Then we need to create the result array, which is going to be equal to an array containing previous. Then we need to loop through the intervals, so let current of intervals, and we need to compare current at start with previous at end, like we did in our solution walkthrough. So if current at start is less than or equal to previous at end, we need to update previous at end. So previous at end is going to be equal to the maximum, so math.max, between previous at end and current end. Else, if there is no overlap, we can just push current into result, and then we need to update previous to be current, because in the next iteration current is going to move one forward, so we need to update previous to match that. And then we can just return res. Okay, let's give that a run. Let's submit it. And there you go.